Hello there and welcome back to the channel. This is Nerd World Empire, and this is a place where we explore and analyze and discuss all things science fiction, particularly Star Trek, because I'm a massive Trekkie. And today's episode we're going to be looking at Cold Station 12, this medical research and storage facility featured heavily in an epic three-parter in Star Trek Enterprise, this fourth season. And that episode has a lot of backstory to it. It was actually a culmination episode of a series of different ideas that would have, had elements of what we ultimately got, but wouldn't have actually contained Brent Spiner and various other things. But ultimately they brought all these different ideas together and created Cold Station 12, which is ultimately a story about human augments from Khan's era once again being activated in the future and kind of seeing the hijinks that they get up to. And also again we get an awesome appearance by another appearance by Brent Spiner playing another member of the Soong family, although I do believe outside of The Next Generation this was the first time he portrayed someone other than his immediate creator. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I think it is. And it would begin the trend of basically all Soongs kind of looking alike, which, I once touched on that in an episode. Is there a reason they all look the same? Are they all clones? Is there something? But anyway, I don't think that's the case. It's just Brent Spiner's awesome, and the more Brent Spiner we can have, the better and the happier we will all be. So, before we get into this, please like, share, and subscribe. Comment down below your thoughts on this episode, on the many faces of Brent Spiner, and whether or not you would have liked to have seen the sort of other versions of this episode that were out there that didn't contain him, and maybe it was just a bit too much Spiner. Don't know why you'd think that though, but let me know if you do. Okay, so just before we get started, just get a bit of feedback here. I'm trying to stop my channel keep getting copyright slams, hence I've done a little bit of alteration to the stock footage. Normally I do these on camera, but at the moment my green screen kind of broke, so gonna do a few like this. What do you guys think? Is it still watchable with the modified effects? And to be honest, CBS Paramount are actually really good at letting people use the footage. They usually release it. They're pretty good at supporting the fans who want to talk about and express the love they have for the franchise. So they're usually pretty good about it, but it is a bit of an inconvenience sometimes. And I do keep getting videos demonetized. Not that I actually do this for a living, but it is still just irritating. So let me know in the comments below how irritating this actual video footage is. So with that out of the way, what do we know about Cold Station 12? Well, let's go with a few of the actual facts. Cold Station 12 was a human built facility, and now I know it was human built for a start, its name, but also if you look at all the instrumentation aboard the facility, and although it is jointly run by humans and Denobulans under the umbrella of the Interspecies Medical Exchange, considering all the technical equipment on the station and other things on the station, the readouts, the controllers, it all is definitely Earth origin. So it's a human facility that's jointly administrated. It was built likely somewhere in the 22nd century, the early 22nd century will be my guess. Its primary function is to house extremely deadly pathogens, viruses, and other biohazards that are too dangerous to be kept in a populated area. It's built into an asteroid in a very densely packed asteroid belt. Although there's only a little bit of it visible from the surface, it actually burrows very deep into the facility, being multiple layers, and the outer surface actually contains a hatch for small starships to enter and exit. The facility's exact location is highly classified, with only a handful of people knowing its location, and although it is defended, its primary defense is that nobody knows where it is, and quite frankly, who'd want to go on board it with all those deadly pathogens? A bunch of augments who they probably don't affect, that's who. At some point in its history, in the 2130s, Arik Soong was the director of this facility, even taking up office there, literally, and noting that even 20 years earlier, in 2154, when he would return to the facility, they still hadn't fixed the flickering lights in the office, despite, even in his time, multiple requests for Starfleet to actually repair these lights that have a habit of flickering every 2 hours. The overall facility has multiple layers to it. Each different area is customizable, and basically, cold station, it's there to freeze things we don't want to get out. The idea is that if something does get out, only the dozen or so personnel that are here at any given time may be exposed, and the facility itself, but it won't have a wider reaching impact on the population of a planet or an ecosystem if it's such a deadly exposure or release. In the 2150s, the facility is directed by a Dr. Jeremy Lucas, who is a close friend of Dr. Phlox, who himself had been previously stationed on the facility temporarily, as again part of the interspecies medical exchange. One of the things that was housed here were leftover embryos from the eugenics wars on Earth in the late 20th century, the same embryos which had birthed individuals such as Khan. Soon would steal 19 of these embryos and take them to another system, gestate them, and basically breed a new race of supermen. That's aside the point for this facility, although they would return back many years later to try and liberate the other 1800 or so augment embryos that are there and take them away to build a new perfect human civilization, causing a war between Earth and the Klingons in the process. Again, outside the scope of this discussion, Cold Station 12 itself is an extremely well thought out and brilliant idea. I mean, here on Earth, we will often take very dangerous things and put them in very isolated areas or they're as far away from human contact as possible, and then man them with a minimum staff and keep them under lockdown. This is obviously extrapolated to the nth degree in that these things have been taken off world and put in an entirely custom built facility at a classified location, which is in and of itself difficult to access with only as I said, a handful of people knowing where it is. And although there are ships coming to and from it, and there are regular communications to and from it, they still do their best to keep its location secret. Here are a few things we can surmise and observe about the facility. Interesting name being given the facility, Cold Station 12. Cold Station, I presume, refers to the fact that they use it for freezing the various viruses and other things, because they don't want to destroy them, because they want to try and create countermeasures to them. They want to understand them. There's no point simply wiping out every trace of a particular virus or pathogen and never developing a counter to it, because if someone else has a stockpile on it and then uses it against you or your ally, you have no defense against it. If you can figure out how to filter it out of the air or create an antivirus or whatever, then this is the kind of place where you do that research. This is a very good idea. Also, the idea of the free exchange of medical information between civilizations and facilities like this to literally facilitate that is great. So again, I assume the cold station part is for that purpose. Cold Station 12 would imply that there are at least 12 such installations, whether they're all built on asteroids or in isolated locations like this, whether they are all human built, whether they are built by different races, and there's a, say, Cold Station 1 through 4 were built by the Denobulans, 5 through 9 or something were built by the Vulcans, and the rest were built by humans, is not entirely clear. There could be more than 12. Again, it's not entirely clear. The classified nature of these installations does sort of make that difficult to ascertain. There are several things about the interior of the facility. Again, much of the technology is clearly of human origin. It's not of Denobulan or other, although I imagine there's input. There are isolation chambers, different types of areas for analysis, study, research, and again the containment of different types of materials. For example, the embryos are kept in embryonic stasis chambers, whereas viruses are likely just kept in frozen cylinders somewhere in a freezer. So there are different layers and different levels of the facility that have different levels of security to it. There is also isolation chambers on the facility that in case there's a viral outbreak you can go into them and be completely self-contained, which look remarkably a lot like the agonizer chambers used by the Terran Empire. Only you want to be inside one of these things, because whatever's going on outside it, probably a lot less pleasant than the confined facility that you're currently in. The facility was developed some point in the 21st century. It was used for a very long time, and in 2154 it was attacked by its former director and his children, a bunch of human augments on a stolen Klingon bird of prey who infiltrated the facility, stole the embryos, threatened to, use the bioweapons, all this kind of stuff, and basically made, the people's lives on there a little less pleasant. It might have been an idea to have an actual security detachment at this facility as well, considering its nature, but this isn't a military research facility after all. This is it's not even a Starfleet base technically, so It's supported by Starfleet, but it's not a military base, despite what you might think. As a result, it won't have military personnel, but a few guards might have been a good idea, considering, again, how dangerous some of the things were. What if the Nausicaans stumbled on and was like, oh, those viral weapons will, fetch a pretty penny of latinum out on the open market? We'll just walk in there and get it. Again, the base's best defense, however, was its ability to not be found. No one knows it's there, it's hidden, it's hard to find. That's its best defense. And perhaps using weapons inside a facility filled with viruses that might get out if you hit them might not be actually such a good idea, but it's food for thought. I, again, think that the creation of a facility like this is absolutely on target for Starfleet and the Proto-Federation organizations like the Interspecies Medical Exchange. They are a very good idea. It's a very clever use of resources to isolate and take away all the dangerous things and put them somewhere else where they can't hurt at least as many people. I do think the facility should have been a little better guarded, but overall was a well-designed and well-thought-out installation. It did have defenses, which are of an undeterminate nature, but they were penetratable, obviously, by those that knew how, which again, that's a small group of people. So actually, overall, aside from being effectively infiltrated by superhumans, aided by a person that used to work there, it's probably a pretty secure location, all things considered. But what do you guys think? Again, do you remember these episodes? They were in Season 4 of Star Trek Enterprise, and there's a lot to unpack in these episodes that's again outside of the scope of this particular episode, but it did see the delightful and triumphant return of Brent Spiner to the Star Trek franchise at that time, not long after his main character of Data had been, spoilers, killed off in Star Trek Nemesis, and we got to see him playing a much more ambiguously unethical character. For lack of a better description off the top of my head right now, Arik Soon, who I have done a video on, there is a profile of him on this channel, which I'll try and remember to link, is a very different Soon in the lineup. A lot of the Soons were very morally grey people to begin with, but Arik and probably Inigo Soon were, amongst, yes, certainly the greatest intellects, but perhaps not the best examples of the Soon family that ever existed. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and if you made it all to this video, thank you for watching. Bye bye.